It's time for Chicagoland Golf with the editor and publisher of Chicagoland Golf magazine, Phil Kosin. The show where for the next 2 hours, you'll get the latest info from the PGA Tour, local tournaments, and tips for your golf game. And now, your host, Phil Kosin.
Thank you, boys. The only show in Chicago that features a bandstand in the studio on a Saturday morning. I believe that's Rich Yakubchak and the Electras from the good old days in Berwyn and Cicero. Nothing wrong with a little polka music on a Saturday morning, and good morning and welcome to the Chicagoland Golf Show. Plenty to talk about today. Even though it's early June, we've just completed the busiest part of our schedule here as far as tournament golf goes in Chicago. Going to talk about last Monday's big U.S. Open qualifier, the sectional at Conway Farms. We'll also talk, and I'll give you some more details. On Monday, 90 women are competing at Skokie Country Club for 19 spots in the U.S. Women's Open. And so that ought to be interesting. Although I looked at the sheet. The USGA sent us the list of names. And I'm going to complain here. There's someone local that also kind of does this, and they sent us the tee times and the pairings, threesomes. And I would love to print that and put it on the website, except they sent it in some sort of HTML document, and it's in some kind of a text box, it's in a box, it's in a form, and I can't figure out how to pull it out of that. I would copy those and put them on the website for anybody that would like to go out to Skokie to see what players are starting at what time, but I can't do it. And I don't mind helping people out and trying to publicize and chase things down for their events, but I'm just not a good typer, and I'm not going to sit there and type out 90 of these things by hand. It isn't that important. I just wish that they would. Well, now I'm showing you how lazy I am. But as a golf writer, that's one of my prerogatives, is to be lazy. And speaking of lazy, now we have a guest this morning. And bring him, Dave White, bring Tim Cronin in here. Good morning, Tim, and welcome to the Chicagoland Golf Show. How are you?
I almost resemble that remark at times, but not this morning. If I'm up at 6 o'clock, I couldn't be lazy. How are you?
I don't want to. Good. I don't want to sound like a habitual bitcher, but the role of a golf writer has really changed over the years, and not only are we writing copy, but we're also doing a lot of jobs that editing and makeup people would have done over the years. And I would love to run the list that CeCe Durbin sent me of all the tee times and pairings for Monday, but I can't extract the information, and I just don't have the time to type out 90 names and starting times.
Phil, I guarantee you would be able to type 90 names and starting times before the second group of those foursomes finishes the first hole. I've never seen foursomes on a 36-hole 1 in 10 crossover. I do hope they finish on Monday.
Oh, is that what she's doing? I didn't look at it that close. I was just trying to work with it.
Yeah, it was. That was the thing that first struck me is, oh my, foursomes. That would take a bit of time if you get into a crunch there off the ninth green and they're still going off the 10th tee. Aye.
Well, we do threesomes at the Illinois Women's Open, and we found that doing a crossover is fine, but that's with threesomes, and that's what the PGA Tour does.
Yes, and that's what the CDGA did on Monday up at Conway Farms, and they did crawl around the place a bit there. The second round actually started about 25 to 35 minutes later, and they were able to finish regulation before darkness, but those last two fellows in the playoff had to come back Tuesday morning to play their final 3 holes before Michael Talcott went on and got the final spot.
Yeah, the big story there was D.A. Points was playing in that, which you haven't heard too much about him lately. Former Illini. Jess Daly played in that and just missed out. One of the big stories, Mike Small, the golf coach at the University of Illinois, went to the 18th, or his 36th hole. It was a 36-hole thing, and he got to the 36th hole, and he thought he needed a birdie to qualify, and so he kind of pressed himself and ended up making a bogey, which means he got into a playoff, and he ended up being the first one eliminated in a 5-man playoff for that last spot. So,
as he said, he forgot to make a par. He thought he needed a birdie. It was one of the great misinformation deals. Thought I needed a birdie. I made a bogey. I forgot to make a par. Well, there you go.
You wonder, did you guys talk to him at all? I mean,
we did.
How was his game? Because I know that he was tied up. He couldn't have played that much to prepare for this with his Illini playing and doing so well in the NCAAs, right?
No, but he never really plays that much, and his game was pretty good, all things considered. He shot 141, which is 1 under par for the 2 rounds up at Conway Farms, but just got caught there at the last hole. Had he made a par, he's at 140, tied with Marco O'Meara, and is on his way to San Diego even as we speak.
Now, maybe it was your story I was reading. I didn't know Marco O'Meara had such distinct Chicago connections.
They're not large, but they were there for the moment when he won the U.S. Amateur back at, I believe, Inverness in 1979. His parents were living in St. Charles, and he was hanging around the western suburbs as well for that year or so, but he's really Southern California, San Diego through and through.
Yeah, but I wasn't, I've been doing this for a long time and covered Marco O'Meara. I never had any idea that he spent time in the Chicago area. But another guy that people don't realize that he was here and he was an assistant at Oak Park Country Club was David Ledbetter. Did you know that?
For what, a year or two, I think.
Yeah, but still, he spent some time here. So, okay, in your writings as a golf writer for the Daily Southtown.
It's now the Southtown Star. Don't forget, we changed our name last year, merging.
Hold on, wait. Let me write that down.
The twice-a-week paper called the Star.
The Southtown Sun-Times Star pretty soon, or?
Who knows? My drag racing coverage for the NHRA Route 66 Nationals this week is running in the Sun-Times as well. So we're just one big, crazy, happy family, I guess. We're crazy and happy sometimes.
I think one of your biggest fans is my producer, Dave White, who was out at the drag races yesterday with his dad.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
That was a good day.
Oh, is Ashley Forrest awesome or what?
She's not too bad, and that whole Force crowd is pretty good there, including Daddy, who still can do it at age 156 or whatever he is.
He's coming off a pretty serious injury last year, too, remember?
Well, he really is, and it's just amazing. Not that he got back in the car, but that he's been able to get back to full speed, if you will, right away. Phil, if you don't mind, we can talk a little drag racing here for a while.
No, that's all right. I'm going to walk away and get a cup of coffee. No, they don't do the nitro-fueled funny cars anymore, do they?
Oh, absolutely, my boy. That's what Ashley drives. And John,
really?
For that matter. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Top fuel and funny car, both, with the nitro.
Big Daddy Don Garlitz?
He's retired, but it's the same principle and the same amazing speed and sound and shockwave that hits you when they fire up at the line.
It's funny, and now you'll see how cleverly I get this back to the subject of golf. But when I was a kid, listening to rock and roll top 40 radio here in Chicago, they ran those commercials all the time. And I thought for years, I don't think it was Jan Gabriel that did those commercials, but whoever did the commercials, there was a guy, and for years I thought it was Arnie the Palmer Beswick. But it was Arnie the Bomber Beswick? Do you remember that?
I remember Jan Gabriel more than I remember Beswick.
Arnie the Palmer Beswick, and I thought, a golfing drag racer. Pretty cool. Well, that was Union Grove, wasn't it? Didn't they have a drag race up there?
Great Lakes Dragaway, still there in Union Grove,
Great Lakes,
Wisconsin. Yeah. I made the mistake of saying that it had closed a few years ago, and I got a letter back saying, we're still here. Oh, all right, good for you.
But in those dragsters, now I'm going to try to drag this back on the tracks. The dragsters don't have a trunk to put a set of golf clubs, do they?
No, not anymore. That was outlawed, unfortunately. You hate to see that because you could just drive, right around, take a left turn, which is also what they don't do, and go to Joliet Country Club.
So what are you doing to keep your readers interested in golf this summer? I mean, there isn't a lot happening locally other than, the Marco Mira story and what went on last week at Conway Farms, what's going to happen at Skokie on Monday. And by the way, while I mention it, I had a bunch of emails and calls last week. We put it up in the news hole on the blog and all the players and everything, and people were emailing me wanting to know if they're allowed to go out and watch these things. The answer is an unequivocal yes. They would love to have you. Of course, you have to have the normal decorum as a spectator. But, yes, the public is enthusiastically welcomed to come out and watch these U.S. Open qualifying rounds. And, fortunately this year in Chicago we've had two sectionals. One last Monday for the men and one for the women on Monday.
And there was a great crowd. There was a great crowd at Conway Farms of maybe 250, which probably equaled a Thursday or Friday at the Bank of America the week before. A lot of Conway Farms members and a lot of folks just off the street who knew what was going on and wanted to see if O'Meara could make it and follow points and follow small. A few Illinois fans in the crowd there. You can tell from the orange and blue. It was great stuff, and the price was right. It's absolutely free, so it's the best show in town and a good deal as well.
The Bank of America Open. And I'm not criticizing anything that they've done because I think they've done everything. It's just not an event that's really taken off in a big way with Chicago golf spectating crowds.
No, it isn't, and I don't know that it ever will be if it couldn't make that push forward in terms of gallery this year. I didn't have to cover it this year and thought about going out Sunday and then decided if I'm not writing it, I can wait till Monday to do golf and write a column on O'Meara or whatever the other good story would have been at Conway Farms. But I watched very closely on television, much as you watch a golf tournament in the press tent when you're at one, and there didn't seem to be a huge number of people there. I don't know if there were that many more there than there might have been last year, except around the 18th green. Well, that doesn't really count because those are generally Bank of America guests and they're schmoozing customers and trying to get big accounts in. What's going on at the fifth hole? Is anybody walking around there? Generally speaking, no. It looks like a European Tour event played in Latvia for the most part. And while I love Scott Kosin, who's the tournament director, and all the folks up there, it's just not gained, as the phrase goes these days, traction with the general public. There's three kinds of golf tournaments in terms of public interest. There's the big ones, like the majors, like what I still call the Western Open, that people are going to go to because they want to see the best players in the world. There are tournaments for sponsors, which is what the Bank of America is for the most part, and the sponsors and the players are the most interested in. And then there's everything else. And everything else is the stuff you don't hear about at all, like some celebrity tournaments and things like that. Bank of America is right there in the middle. And as long as the Golf Channel is happy and the check clears and the Bank of America folks are happy and the tour gets the date it wants in the city of Chicago, then, happy for them. Everybody else doesn't really have to care about it if they don't want to, and it's going to go on anyway.
Yeah, I have a feeling that while it was a big priority with Mr. Bobbins and the folks from LaSalle Bank, the previous title sponsor, I'm not sure I'm getting the feeling, the vibes, that it's that important to Bank of America.
Yeah, have no idea.
In the overall scheme of things?
Yeah, I don't know those folks. Norm Bobbins was a golf nut. And in the old days of the PGA Tour, which was CEO-driven for sponsorship, a guy like Jack Frazee at Centel or a Bob Weishaupt up at the Motorola cell phone group could say, hey, I like golf, we're going to sponsor this. And the same thing is true on the Nationwide Tour because of the price range. It's a little more difficult to decide to spend $7 million on your own for a PGA Tour event. But for $1 million or so, or $1.5 million, you can do that on the Nationwide Tour if you're a CEO. Bank of America people picked up the old contract. Will they keep it? I don't know. You'd like to think that they would because it is a decent tournament. It's very good golf. It's just people that generally you don't know who they are if you don't really follow the back pages of Golf World or Golf Week. But other than that, it's a good show, and you can learn something from watching these guys. Does that mean we're going to have it? I don't know. It depends on what the CEO decides.
Let me jump in for a break. I'll reintroduce you, Tim Cronin of the Southtown Star, which is the new conglomeration of the Star and the Southtown. Tim is a golf writer. He's also his true passion is covering auto racing, I think. But we've got him for golf this morning with us on the Chicagoland Golf Show. It's 6:15. You're listening to The Score, Sports Radio 670.
First place Chicago White Sox. First place Chicago Cubs. First pick in the NBA draft. Even the first place Rush and Wolves. You're locked into the first place sports radio station in Chicago. 670 The Score and 670thescore.com.
For the best deal on Ricoh or Konica Minolta color and black and white copiers, call Christy at Illinois Paper and Copier, 630-679-9090. 6:22 in Chicago if you've got a tea time. By the way, if you haven't heard the news, you don't have to miss any of this show. You can go to 670thescore.com and load an MP3 file and play it on your MP3 player, or you can listen live to the podcast anytime you want. 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. And that'll be what Tim Cronin will be doing afterwards, right? Now, tell me you're not going to go there and you're not going to download that thing just to have a copy to save this moment in time.
If I knew how to do that, I might do that. But that's,
you're kidding.
That's a bit beyond me right now. I still use a VCR. I don't have a DVR. So, I'm old-fashioned here, my boy.
Well, you can just listen on a computer, though. You just go there and you left click and it'll say save this file, and you save it to your hard drive, and then you go there and you click on it, and that should fire up your music player, and it'll play the show for you anytime you want.
We've come a long way, haven't we, from the old days of
yes, we have.
Manual typewriters and telecopiers and whatnot.
Well, that's what I was talking about. You try to do your job, and everybody wants publicity for their events and their things. And we have no problem with that. I mean, that's our bread and butter. But you got to meet us halfway, and give it to us in a format where I don't have to pay somebody for 2 hours to sit there and work it out. Because I got news for you. If I've got 4 of those and space for only 2, I can tell you which 2 are going to get used. Now, is it like that over at the Southtown Star too?
Well, we have not an army anymore of people, but we have a few people who can do that kind of thing. But our problem is space, as it is with every newspaper in the country. We run less agate than we used to, which is unfortunate. So people wanting to see the last, say, 60 or 70 scores on a Thursday or Friday from a regular tour event aren't going to find them in most newspapers anymore. They've got to go online. And alas, sometimes those people stay online and don't come back to the newspapers, which is a problem that our business is having these days, which is why it's the Southtown Star and not 2 papers anymore. And it's why every newspaper in the country has laid people off and so on down the line. On the other hand, you guys had 7 minutes of ads in a row, which is more ads than some radio stations have. So good for you.
Well, thank you. And this may be hard to believe, but, maybe I do have something to do with it. Everybody wants to be on this show because we attract listeners on a Saturday morning. On the other hand, there isn't that much competing on a Saturday morning, but
I'm an avid
still
listener of the Farm Report if I happen to be up this early. But, I'd
who's
like to
got
check
that?
those frozen pork bellies out,
Okay, we talked about the qualifiers at Conway Farm and Skokie and the fact that we're done for events. And I don't want anybody to get the idea that we're criticizing the Bank of America Open. I mean, there's been a hearty effort to make that into, a big-time event here in Chicago. It's just, I don't know what it is, Tim. I mean, it's not their fault. It's the same thing when we had the LPGA here. What was it, 2 years or 3 years at Stonebridge? It's all a blur to me now.
Yeah, 3 years. Well, the Bank of America folks do everything right in terms of how they run the operation for spectators. Marvelous ticket price. You can get in darn near for free. The players love it, as well they should. It's one of the highest purses on their tour. everything is done first class. It's just that sometimes people don't necessarily care. And that was the case of the LPGA at Stonebridge, where it was done quite well, and you had all the great players in the world there, including the young Lorena Ochoa, who everybody called Slow Choa there, but apparently she's picked up her pace, and obviously she's winning darn near everything in sight. Plus Annika Storenstam shooting a 62 one day and seeing somebody else come along and do the same thing. Great stuff, but sometimes people don't care, even if it's great stuff. And that was the case there.
I was surprised. I mean, you had all of the big names there. You had, Lorena Ochoa was an up-and-comer. I remember that one year she played in a group on the second round. She played with Nicole Jure, from Berwyn, because I walked most of the round with them. And Nicole was nervous. There was a lot of attention. It was kind of fun watching the two of them size each other up because, Nicole's like, well, I've been out here for years and, you're the kid.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that they did it right. I would, that's debatable. The marketing, Kellogg Keebler, a fine title sponsor, but I don't know if, well, first of all, the management, both times the LPGA Tour has come to Chicago, has been questionably iffy at best. You remember the days going back to the Suntime Shootout back at Oak Brook Golf Club in, what was that, 1991?
Oak Brook for 1 year and then White Eagle for 3 more. Yes, made that tournament rest in pieces. You never knew who was running it at the end. You knew who was running the Kellogg Keebler at the end, but you just didn't know if the bills were going to get paid. And
well, yeah, I didn't trust that guy. I didn't trust the guy. And I walked around with him on the golf course that Sunday, and he had talked about how they had a new title sponsor lined up, and this was going to be a big thing. And then 3 or 4 days later, one of the girls, well, actually more than one of the girls, sent me an email that they had gotten from Mark. I can't remember his name now. Mark Hirsch, I think.
Yes.
That he was leaving to take a position with another company in St. Louis. So, there was no commitment there. It was the marketing was questionable because they didn't really reach out to golf fans. They thought putting a stand-up of Annika Sorenstam holding a box of Keebler cookies in the cookie aisle at grocery stores was gonna bring them the crowd that they were looking for, and that's not where you reach golf fans. That's all. But, we could sit there and, of course we can always do it better. We'll take another break. Talking to the star of the Southtown Star, Tim Cronin, their golf writer. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago, The Score, Sports Radio 670. This segment on Chicagoland Golf is brought to you by the DQ Hot Dog of the Week. Win a Dairy Queen gift card. Log on to 670thescore.com for the DQ Hot Dog of the Week contest information. God, Tim Cronin, it's really hard not to play air drums on the beginning of that.
Yeah, where'd the polka kids go? I missed them.
They're out of here.
Oh, all right.
They come in, they play one song, the same song it's Union, and then they're out of here. They're out of here.
Petrillo still lives, eh?
And they leave this place a mess, too, when they leave. Gosh, they didn't pick up after themselves.
All the beer bottles. I don't know if they're just, getting up early and going out on a Saturday morning or if they're just coming in from an all-nighter. But anyway, we're glad to have them, our studio orchestra.
Absolutely.
Rich Yakubchak and the Electras. We're talking about, having Annika here in town and even with names like that and reasonably good publicity in the newspapers and in the media here. And it was hard to draw any great amount of fans out to Stonebridge. Those that did show up, of course, were extremely, enthusiastic. But now next year we've got the Solheim Cup here out at Rich Harvest Farms, which is, that's quite a drive from downtown. And my question is, and I'll run it past you. That was the first thing I thought of when I heard that Annika was was retiring is where does that put the marketing plan for the Solheim Cup next year? Quick, Tim, name 3 girls other than Annika Sorenstam that played on last year's European Solheim Cup team.
Sorry,
and I've made my point.
Cannot be done. Yeah, but I think that is going to be marketed, and it already is, as just U.S. versus Europe. If it's marketed as Annika versus the U.S., that's a big mistake, even if she's playing, and even if she's playing well, because it's more than that. They've got to get across the point that this is the female version of the Ryder Cup, and everybody knows how exciting. So I always think team golf is contrived how exciting the Ryder Cup is. If they do that with the Solheim Cup, they'll do well. What is well? Well isn't 40,000 a day in that case. I think 10,000 a day would be a fine turnout. And as constricted as Rich Harvest is at some points, that might be just about as many as they'd want to have. It is far out there. It's closer to Rockford than it is downtown, I think. If anything, it's close to Rockford out there. It's a lovely, interesting, intricate, quirky golf course, and that will be part of the attraction. I think the fact that generally you can't play Rich Harvest Farms because it's in Jerry Rich's backyard, and obviously you're going to be very picky about who you have play in your backyard. So it's a treat to see the place, and that is I think part of the attraction. If they can put those 2 points together, female Ryder Cup, interesting place that you never get to see, then they'll do well, I think. And if they can't do that, then it would be a very expensive experiment.
Yes, and what I proposed, and I would really like to see it happen, there's been a precedent set. Let's face it, this event was modeled after the Ryder Cup. And they picked up on the Ryder Cup when it had already gentrified from Great Britain and Ireland versus the U.S., which was going nowhere. And because of basically a kid named Seve Ballesteros, who had a lot of charisma and was fun to watch, they expanded. And, of course, the American team habitually beat up on Great Britain and Ireland, so they expanded to include all of Europe. Well, my proposal that I made a couple weeks ago on my blog at ChicagolandGolf.com was that they ought to take a look and maybe open up that team to the rest of the world. Maybe that would see, because right now you've got the big drawing card, and it's going to be a problem for the LPGA Tour for a while to figure out who's going to rival, who's going to challenge Lorena Ochoa. Otherwise, she's going to have a free run of the LPGA Tour and do exactly what she's been doing lately, and she will continue that. But you've got to have that Jack and Arnie thing, the Tiger Phil thing, in order to really create some interest. Otherwise, it's not fun. And why not make the change now and make it the United States versus the rest of the world, and get a Lorena Ochoa on that team and some of these other players. We've got a lot of Korean players and Asians that are also doing well that are excluded. What are your thoughts on that?
Or you could go to 4 teams and have the United States, Europe, Asia, and then the rest of the world, which would be Lorena's team, I guess you would say, and whoever good South African gals or Australian or New Zealand. I don't know much about the depth of the circuit outside of the Koreans who have just invaded. It's amazing how many there are, all with the same last name. I don't know who's who sometimes. It must be wonderful if you're watching Korean television because you know everybody, but we don't yet know all those folks because they all haven't won at the right time. But, the more power to them. Go to 4 teams and make it a 3 or 4 day extravaganza, or 4 or 5, I should say, because it's 3 right now, and have semifinals and then finals. Try that for size. And what if the U.S. doesn't make it? Oh, then the ratings would be awful, so they probably won't do something so drastic and innovative as that. I'd like to see the same thing in the Ryder Cup. It's about time that Ernie Els gets to play in the Ryder Cup before he retires, or all the Australians. Why not have that? Why just the U.S. and Europe? Yes, there's the President's Cup, but nobody cares about the President's Cup. Put the 2 concepts together.
Oh,
then you'll
shame
really
on you. Oh, shame on you.
Not even the President cares about the President's Cup.
Yeah, that kind of takes us into an interesting siding here, but let's go there. The numbers for the Memorial last week on Sunday, the overnights, are like a 1.3.
I was going to say it was about a 1.8. Was it 1.3? Was it that low?
Well, maybe it was a 1.8. I don't remember. I'm doing this off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I thought it was about half of what it was the year before.
Well, because Tiger wasn't there. What a surprise. Stunning development.
Right. And what did you have here for people to do in Chicago? Families are trying to do more things on weekends together. The days of Dad saying, I'm going to play golf Saturday and Sunday, and, the hell with you, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, 25 years ago, that was it. If Dad wanted to play golf Saturday and Sunday at the club, that's where he went. Not anymore. So the family's involved. So you had, like last Sunday, you had the Bank of America Open here in town, which was a great family event for cheaps. You had the Cubs at home playing to win an entire homestand, okay? Then you had the Memorial on TV. You had a NASCAR race. See, Dave, I didn't forget. You had a NASCAR race going on all at the same time. There's so much competition for attention.
And it goes on and on. Same thing
and quite frankly, PGA Tour golf is pretty damn boring.
Well, same thing
and
this
they've
week.
Stretched it out.
You've got two baseball teams in first place in Chicago. So in terms of, say, newspaper coverage, where are our editors going to play the LPGA Championship, a genuine major going on this week? We've got the Wolves chasing the Calder Cup tonight. You've got drag racing in Joliet. Big Brown going for the Triple Crown. The first time in 30 years that a horse really, really, really has a great chance to win it. Where do you play the LPGA? Much less whatever the PGA Tour. Where are they this week? Memphis? I can't even tell you. And then try and sneak a U.S. Open preview in there. There's just no room at the inn sometimes. And that's the case in terms of people's personal time or trying to get it in the paper or how much time you'd have on the score on a regular update to squeeze everything in. It's almost impossible.
Did you watch the last hour of the Memorial by any chance? I know you tape a lot of stuff.
I did not.
Where J.B. Holmes walked off the 18th green and snubbed Jack Nicklaus,
He said he didn't know that Jack was standing there because all the guys were wearing the same jacket. That's what I read.
Well,
then he
I'm
came
not
back
buying
and shook
it.
hands. He shook hands with him later, but not on CBS, so I guess it doesn't count.
Well, either that or somebody corrected him and he had a guilty conscience. But, hey, I shouldn't be making up things for people, right? I watched it, and I thought I even saw, like some people did. I wasn't sure, but there might have even been a smirk on his caddy's face. And it was after he shot 77, and he was one of those that complained about the golf course. When you get an event like the Memorial with what some of these guys are making, Tim, and you have the players who don't sell any tickets, the non-marquee names, are complaining about the conditioning and the setup at the golf course, that's a problem, isn't it?
Well, geez, people were complaining Monday that, oh, heavens, we're only getting 17 minutes between our morning and afternoon rounds. We'll play a little quicker and you'll get the full half hour or 45 minutes that the CDGA already had on their calendar to let you have lunch and maybe hit a few balls in between rounds. Maybe they could just play a little faster or play a little better. Try and hit a fairway now and then.
Okay, so now we have one of the premier events. We go from that to a premier event that, my goodness, the USGA couldn't have done us a bigger favor than to put Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson together in the same groups in the first two rounds of the U.S. Open.
That'll be fun. I'm sure NBC likes it. Maybe they suggested it. They've been known to do that.
Well, it's ESPN.
The first 2 days they're on NBC Thursday and Friday for 2 hours each day.
But ESPN is going to carry the bulk of it those 2 days, along with one of my favorite golf announcers and my favorite people, by the way, Chris Berman.
You're the one.
What's that?
You're the one that likes Chris Berman.
Well, me and Chris, we both like him.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, real quick before I let you go, you want to give us a prediction on the Open? Is Tiger Woods going to be able to come back after 2 months of at least not competing and knee surgery? Is he going to be able to come back and be a force at Torrey Pines, which, just like with Mickelson, is one of the golf courses he teethed on?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that, assuming he's 100% healthy or darn close to that he'll be a factor all the way along, and you never want to bet against the kid. He seems to have a relatively decent track record. I don't think Phil will do it. Phil has had trouble at San Diego at some places along the line. He's won there, he's lost there. I don't know who's going to win it if it isn't Tiger, though. The USGA setup isn't contrived as it used to be so much under Tom Meeks as it is now. It's a more fair setup, but that doesn't mean the best player always wins. the best player doesn't have to win in a given week. It's whoever scores lowest. Who knows? If you don't hit the fairway, what if the wind blows? What if there's fog? What if crazy things happen? It's the U.S. Open. Nutty things happen in U.S. Opens that make no sense at all the rest of the year in golf, but they do happen and they affect the game. So who knows?
Well, if I'm the one guy that likes Chris Berman and thinks he does a great job as a golf announcer, you're the one guy that thought Oakmont was fair last year.
I guess it was if you hit the fairways. I don't know anybody who could do that, though. So.
All right, well, keep it between the fence posts.
Thank you.
Keep it in the short stuff.
If I can find it, I will. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Tim, I appreciate your getting up with us this morning. Have fun at the drag races at Joliet this weekend.
And don't forget, Sunday is the big day there. We'll see you.
All right, thank you. That's Tim Cronin of the, as I've been corrected now, the Southtown Star. The Southside Star and newspapers in the Southtown merged. They're all owned by the Sun-Times Company. So he is their golf writer and has been there for a million years, and is one of the more knowledgeable people about really what's going on in Chicago and the history of golf in the area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we're going to take a break. After 7 o'clock, I'm going to turn it over to the listeners. We'll let you guys jump in here. We'll do open line phone calls between 7 and all the way to the end of the show. Haven't had the chance to do that this year, so you want to get ready. Actually, one of you, I know this is going to excite everybody, one of you is actually going to win a cap from Straka.com. The number, though, if you want to get queued up, if you're calling from a car phone or you have a tee time and you're in a hurry, tell Dave White, our producer, or whoever answers the phone, that's the case. We'll try to get to you as soon as possible. 312-644-6767 is the number. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show, and you're listening to The Score, Sports Radio 670. .653 in Chicago. Don't forget, if you can't listen to this show in its entirety, you can go to 670thescore.com, or 670thescore.com, and you can find either an MP3 file or you can just click on the little button and you can listen to the show, a replay of the show in its entirety. Best thing to do would be to download it to your computer, and then either put it into your MP3 player, listen to it at your leisure. I usually try to evaluate what we've done. I usually download it to my laptop and then listen to it later on Saturday afternoon and make notes about what I could do to improve the show and what we can do to make things run smoother. Next week, we've got a good show planned. Right now, we've already got Gary Van Sickle, the senior writer from Sports Illustrated, signed up. He will be coming to us live and direct from Torrey Pines. Should be interesting, and I'll talk about it more in the second hour of the show, about the U.S. Open, some of the pairings, what's available for the rest of the summer if you want to be a golf spectator. Chicago, we're done. But there are some other events around the area. And I'd also like your phone calls, and I'll throw out some topics when we come back after the top of the hour. One of them, of course, is how has the economy affected your golf? Are you playing less? Are you playing closer to home? Has it not affected you at all? What are you doing to battle the high gas prices, if that's become an issue for you? It might be interesting, too. And we have a lot of golf course owners and managers that listen to this show. So now would be a good time to get those opinions out. And we can talk about a bunch of stuff. It'll be open lines after 7 o'clock when we come back. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show. I'm Phil Kosin, and you're listening to The Score, Sports Radio 670.
Cubs, Sox, Bears, Bulls, hey, we cover them all.
WSCR.
WSCR HD.
Chicago. The Score. A CBS radio station.
Let's get back to Phil Kosin and Chicagoland Golf on 670 The Score.
This segment on Chicagoland Golf is brought to you by vasectomyclinics.com. No needle, no scalpel. 877-877-4VAS. That's 877-877-4827. Chicagoland Golf Show. We're opening up the phone lines. 312-644-6767. Anything golf-related that's on your mind. Possible topics. How has what's going on with the economy affected your golf? Have you bought any new equipment lately? Are you holding off? Are you one of the few, apparently, that has gone for the new technology where you can switch heads on shafts and they're all interchangeable? Are you driving as far? Usually we had golf courses on the periphery of the Chicago area that were a little cheaper and less crowded, and people were willing to take the time to drive out to those courses when gas was relatively cheap, and it would make a nice day, to go out to those courses. Now, they're not such a bargain when you're paying $4.15 a gallon for gasoline, as it is here mostly in most of the Chicago area. So your thoughts on that? As a couch potato, do you think that golf on TV is getting boring? Does it capture your attention? The numbers are down on PGA Tour telecasts, as with the exception, as Tim Cronin said in the last hour, of events when Tiger Woods is playing, especially when he's in the hunt. Is there just maybe it's too much golf on TV? What do you think? And another possible topic is, do you play by your own rules? We had Eric Zorn of the Chicago Tribune on this show last week, and that's one of the things we were talking about. And I'm not advocating, I'm not preaching heresy here, I'm not advocating that we throw away the USGA rule book. But to play by the rules and play totally according to Hoyle, the same rules that they play in PGA Tour and USGA events, maybe that's a bit much for the average golfer. I don't know. We go out and play with our buddies, and it's not a serious game, even though we have some money involved. Yeah, we have gimmies. Might give everybody a breakfast ball off the first tee because we're out there. It's social golf. I've also played tournament golf. I've played USGA events. I've played state championships. I've played weekly challenge golf tour. And that's 100% by the USGA rules. So do you think that they maybe need to take another look at the rule book and see if there's a way they could make it a little more user-friendly so that you don't have to hire an attorney to interpret it for you? Now, we were talking before about the fact that there isn't much going on here in the Chicago area as far as spectator golf goes, now that the Bank of America Open is finished. But there are some opportunities, and so I'd take time to just go over some of those with you. I think the next one coming up would be in the middle of July, second week in July, the John Deere Classic out at the Quad Cities. You're not going to see Phil Mickelson or Tiger Woods or any of the real big names playing in that one because they don't have very good dates. They're the week before the British Open, or as they call it, the Open Championship. The week of the British Open, there's not much going on here in the Midwest. The week following the British Open is the U.S. Bank Championship in Milwaukee, which is also a little bit of a drive. Quad Cities is probably, 180 miles west of Chicago. Milwaukee is probably 90 miles from the central Chicago area. So it is a gas expenditure, but unfortunately, because of the dates sandwiching the Open Championship, neither of those events has any big marquee name players. Tiger Woods hasn't played in it for years, not since he needed a sponsor exemption back in 1996. Mickelson hasn't made a stop at either place. So you're gonna see a field slightly better than what you saw at the Bank of America Open here last weekend. Now, your chances to see the big names play. August 7th through the 10th, PGA Championship at Oakland Hills. That'll be a world-class field. It'll be one of the strongest fields of any of the majors, mainly because it's so big and they have so many players out of the top 100. Would you consider going to Oakland Hills to watch the PGA Championship? It's about probably a 4.5-hour drive to Detroit. How about your other option, going to St. Louis the first week in September to watch the BMW Championship? That's probably probably another 4.5-hour drive, 4 hours to St. Louis from most points in the central Chicago area. The problem I have with both of those events, we've had calls and letters asking us to find out, and so we did. Neither one of them is going to offer single-day tickets. Now, when the BMW Championship was here last year at Cog Hill, they had no problem with single-day tickets. You could walk up and buy a ticket at the last minute on any day, including Sunday. Same thing with the PGA Championship, and kudos to the members at Medina. 2006, it was designed and it was marketed all along that they would not turn off the ticket, they would not shut down the turnstiles any of the 4 days because of overcrowding or anything on the golf course. They let anybody in that wanted to walk up and pay the price for a ticket. But they're not doing that at Oakland Hills, and they're not doing that at St. Louis. If you want to see the FedEx Cup, the BMW Championship at Bellerive in St. Louis, you have to buy, the cheapest option is to buy a weekly grounds pass at $225. At Oakland Hills for the PGA, which isn't that far away, you have to buy a weekly badge that's going to cost you $125 more. It's going to cost you $350. They do have a fairly cheap single-day ticket to go there on Monday of the PGA, but that's... I've been to PGAs on Monday, and I've been to the golf course, and it's not exactly what I'd call compelling. Not even all the big players are there. No guarantee. Mostly they are, but there's really no guarantee. So what do you do? Oh, one more thing I do want to mention, that there is an LPGA event in downstate Springfield, July 17th to 20th at Panther Creek Golf Course. And they're expecting Lorena Ochoa to play in that. That is, of course, the LPGA State Farm Classic. They're expecting Lorena Ochoa to play in that and Annika Sorenstam. And a little added storyline, Michelle Wee has accepted one of their sponsor exemptions. And as we all know, it's where the governor hangs his hat once in a while. Springfield's about 3.5-hour drive from Chicago. I don't know how long it takes the governor's plane to get down there, but anyway. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about, and if you have anything that's on your mind, 312-644-6767 on anything golf. We'll entertain your questions and comments this morning. The official pairings and starting times came out this week for the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, now that they finished up all of the qualifiers. We have a couple local guys, or guys with Illinois connections in the field, other than, of course, Luke Donald, who makes his home here now in Chicago. Kevin Streelman from Wheaton is playing in it. He got into it. He didn't have to go to Open qualifying. He got in. And D.A. Points, who now makes his home in Florida, but D.A. grew up in the Pekin area and played for University of Illinois and is now playing the Nationwide Tour, and he's in the event too. So that would be the only players of local interest playing in the event. The USGA did something different this year. Mike Davis is the Director of Rules and Competition. It was kind of funny because he made a comment, and a lot of golf writers picked up on this, and they figured it was a done deal. He had originally said that he wanted to take the top 12 in the current world rankings and put together threesomes so that you had all the best players playing together, which doesn't always happen. They could do it this year because usually the defending champion plays with the Public Links champion and the U.S. Amateur champion, given that they have remained amateur up to this point. Colton Ost won both of those, but he turned pro which meant he turned down an invitation to play in the Masters this year. He turned down an invitation to play in the Memorial to play here last weekend in the Bank of America Open. And then he was one of those at Conway Farms on Monday trying to get into the U.S. Open, and he didn't do it. So he had 2 invitations, qualified twice, 2 ways to get into the U.S. Open had he remained an amateur. But anyway, Mike Davis wanted to have some fun, and he was able to do this because the defending champ isn't in the top 12. And neither, and then the other 2 champions that he would have played with weren't involved. But Davis took and put together 4 groups of the top 12. And, the premier group, as we talked about earlier in the show, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and Adam Scott are going off together. The number 2 watchable group, Ernie Els, Jeff Ogilvy, and Justin Rose, they are 4, 5, and 6 in the world rankings. That first group is 1, 2, and 3. Then you have the group of 7, 8, and 9, Steve Stricker, Jim Furyk, and KJ Choi. And then finally you have the group from 10 to 12, Vijay Singh, Sergio Garcia, and Stuart Sink. Now, originally Davis said he might send them off at proximate times, not following the tradition of spreading out the talent between morning and afternoon rounds just to keep the TV people happy. A lot of people picked up on that. Doug Ferguson in the Associated Press, a few other writers around the country, wrote it as if that was what was going to happen. Well, it didn't happen that way. The groups will tee off. 2 will go off Thursday morning and 2 in the afternoon flight. TV, ESPN, and NBC won out as far as that's concerned. But you got to admit, watching Woods and Mickelson play Torrey Pines in the same group those first 2 days is going to be really, really compelling. They have some interesting groups that they've also put together aside from those 4. There's a group with the defending champion, Miguel Angel Jimenez. You have Miguel Angel Jimenez, Boo Weekley, and Shingo Katayama all playing together. I think there's going to be a language barrier in that. I'm not even sure any of those guys speak English, including Weekley.
It's definitely the all Scrabble foursome or threesome there.
Yeah. And then there's another one. It's a group of guys that all wear a junior size green jacket. Trevor Immelman, Zach Johnson, and Mike Weir. All of those guys are not the biggest guys in the world, and they're all Masters champions. So when Mike Davis put that group together, that's going to be fun too. And then there's the other group that really caught my eye is Roy Sabatini, Colin Montgomery, and David Toms are playing together. And I thought to myself as I saw that, I go, what did David Toms do to pee off the USGA to play with those 2 guys? Because those 2, Sabatini and Colin Montgomery, are 2 of the biggest complainers on the planet. And so poor David Toms will have to end up playing with them. So that's it. It should be a lot of fun watching the U.S. Open. There's going to be plenty of television, unlike the Masters. It'll be on all day Thursday, all day Friday. Glorious high definition. And I always enjoy watching majors. I always get up for that, as I'm sure you do too. My 2 favorites, though, are the Masters and the U.S. Open. And maybe the U.S. Open a little bit more than the Masters, especially lately, since they've been going over the top on setting the courses up. I don't know how they're going to set up Torrey Pines. There's a lot of opinions. Certain things are locked in stone. How much rough there's going to be where the fairways pinch out because they had to plant grass for that over a year ago. I've heard stories about how thick and how gnarly the rough is. They've had great growing conditions, and it hasn't been hot enough out there in San Diego yet for the overseed rye in the rough, which is what they do to golf courses that have a lot of Bermuda on them, or cool season grasses or warm season grasses that go dormant. They overseed rye. So in the rough you have the overseed of rye, you have Bermuda, and you have Kikuyu grass, which is what they have completely as the rough at a place like Riviera Country Club. It's almost like a vine that goes that grows close to the ground. And to me, it's as much fun hitting a golf ball out of as ice plant. If you've ever had the opportunity to play out on the West Coast and play and have ice plant in different parts of the golf course, you definitely don't want to hit your ball in there. So it'll be real interesting because the rough they could go through and cut, but they were walking around during the week, last week already, checking it out, and they were dropping balls in the rough, and they were getting completely different lies every time they dropped the ball. One ball would drop down and lay on the ground, and it would wiggle its way through all the grass and be way down buried. Another ball would go halfway down, and then some of the balls that they were dropping were staying up on the top like they were sitting on a tee. So if that's going to be the case next week at the Open, it's going to be a crapshoot when you hit it into that rough. I mean, you have no idea what kind of lie you're going to get. And there again is where you're going to have a luck factor. And I don't like to see luck factor in that much. There's always going to be some luck factor in a golf tournament, but too much opportunity for good luck and bad luck. And sometimes that's what knocks the big names out of the hunt. And makes, let's face it, if it's a bunch of lesser lights playing on the weekend, it's not as attractive a TV event. It's 7:16 in Chicago. If you've got a tee time at 8 o'clock, you've got exactly a little over 40 minutes to get there. And don't forget, we've got plenty of Chicagoland golf coming up. If you have a phone call, anything on your mind, 312-644-6767. One of our callers is going to get a hat from Straka.com. I'm Phil Kosin. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show. You're listening to The Score, Sports Radio 670.
You want first place Chicago baseball? This is the sports radio station in Chicago to talk first place White Sox and first place Cubs. 670 The Score and 670thescore.com.
7:25 in Chicago. For the best deal on Ricoh or Konica Minolta color and black and white copiers, call Christie at Illinois Paper and Copier, 630-679-9090. 312-644-6767 is the phone number here. Let's talk to Karen on a car phone. Hi, Karen. Welcome into the Chicagoland Golf Show.
Good morning, Phil.
How are you?
There's probably not many women that call your show, are there?
I don't know. I don't open up the phone lines as often as everybody else does. We try to have guests on here, but go ahead. It doesn't matter.
Well, I was just calling because you were talking about no names in the U.S. Open and Phil and Tiger, and I think that there's a reason why they're pros and they're all very good, and it comes down to the short game and who's putting well that week. And I think anyone that gets into the U.S. Open has an opportunity to win. And I just think that just because Tiger and Phil aren't, when you talk about do people watch tournaments if Tiger's not in it, I think people do.
I think you're right. I think there's a certain element that will watch no matter what. Just like there's a certain element that will automatically buy a ticket to, for instance, the Western Open. Just to support the event, and they like to be out there and they enjoy the experience. And it's the same thing with television. But let's face it, this is entertainment. This is big-time stuff. This is the USGA that has Lexus and Barclays and Rolex as their sponsors. This is worldwide television. This is advertising. It's not a CDGA state amateur event. This is entertainment. And I think the TV people would agree with me, too, and I think most of the listeners would agree with me that it's more fun to watch when you have the big names coming down the line and they're able to compete with each other. I would love to see nothing more than Mickelson, Woods, Ernie Els, Adam Scott, all fighting it out and changing places on Sunday. Don't you agree? And I'm not trying to demean any of the other players. It just makes for better television watching, don't you think?
Yes, but isn't it great to see that Paul Guidos or someone like that who, might possibly win his first tournament go out and win the U.S. Open? I think it's exciting. So
yes. Well, yeah, and that's part of the charm of the U.S. Open, and I think it's always interesting to me because I've been covering U.S. Opens for almost 30-something years. What's always interesting is to see just about every year some guy that's one of those no-names, a driving range pro, like in Tin Cup. Mike Nicolette from Chicago, Buffalo Grove, did it one year at Wingfoot. They come out of nowhere. They play out of their fanny. The first day, they have an out-of-body experience. They catch lightning in a bottle. They shoot a low number, and they're actually leading the Open. To me, that's part of the charm of the whole thing. But when I get to Saturday and Sunday, I want to see the best players in the world, or at least those that are playing the best for those 4 days up near the top. And when you bring in the kind of rough that they had and the conditions that they had at Oakmont last year and the year before that, it tends to bring bad luck and bad luck especially, too much into play, which can knock the bigger names off the leaderboard. Does that make sense? All right, thanks for your call. Pardon me? We're going to watch anyway. You know that. We're going to watch anyway. We're going to watch all 26 hours or whatever they give you. Thanks for your call. Let's go to Oak Lawn real quick and talk to Mike. Mike, you're on the Score.
Hey, speaking about watching golf, it's hard to sit inside on these nice days and watch golf on TV because we've been cooped up all winter long like that.
I agree, and it's what we said in the early part of the show. There's so much else to do, and if you're going to you can do things outdoors. You can go play. Number one, you go play. Number two, you go out and do something with your family, either at the park or maybe like last Sunday, go to the Bank of America Open. And if you are going to sit in on a beautiful day and watch television, there's also a lot of competition for your eyes, man. I mean, you got the Memorial was on last week. The Bank of America Open was on. The Cubs were on, trying to sweep a homestand. They're in first place. That's exciting. There was a NASCAR race on for those that like to go that direction. And so, there's a lot of competition. But in watching TV golf, don't you find it gets especially if you don't have Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson and somebody challenging and lead changes and everything, one of the bigger names, don't you find it a little bit boring? Because that's what the TV ratings say.
Yeah, it does get a little bit boring if none of the big names are there. Plus, with that nationwide tour event up for the Bank of America Open, that was a really good field they had there, but it was really hard to watch it on the Golf Channel. One day it was on at like 4 o'clock in the morning or something, and it was really a shame to see Skip Kendall fall all the way down into 31st place. He spent a lot of money.
Yeah, he did. That cost him a lot. He was one of the leaders going into the final round. I think there were 3 guys. The gentleman we had on last Saturday, David McKenzie, was the front 9 leader during the final round on Sunday. And right. Then he just stopped. He made a couple of bogeys and stopped making birdies and just kind of sat, I think, at like 12 under, and the other guys passed him up. But but don't you? I think one of the big reasons there is a lot of parity. I think the equipment has brought a lot of guys even where before they might not have been so evenly matched, but. To me, it's just not compelling, and Karen can have her opinions, and you don't want to call them no names, but you want to call them relative unknowns. And to me, unless it's the U.S. Open and it's kind of a rags to riches story, it's just not that interesting to watch some of the leaderboards that I've seen on Sunday on PGA Tour events. I'm a golf writer, and I flip those things on to see what's happening when they start. And if what I see doesn't compel me, I don't sit and watch it. Do you?
No, it's not. I mean, it's really hard to, especially when you know that there's a Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson out there. And especially with Tiger not playing, it's been really hard.
Yeah. All right, who do you like in the U.S. Open?
I like Steve Stricker.
Oh, very good. Are you from Wisconsin? You're from Oak Lawn. You mentioned Kendall. You're mentioning all the.
Wisconsin.
Pardon me?
I was born up in Wisconsin.
I was wondering why you were mentioning all the cheeseheads.
Yeah, maybe Jerry Kelly, too, as a dark horse.
Don't laugh. He played good last week, and, I've seen Jerry, and Jerry, he's a terrific person. He's a very emotional player, but the year he won at Cog Hill, boy, he could have won any tournament that he played in that day. He got into a zone, and if Jerry gets into a zone and starts putting well, he could compete, and he could certainly win the whole thing, which would be really a thrill because it would be kind of fun to watch a guy like that grew up close to Chicago.
Yeah,
Mike.
Okay, well, I appreciate your time.
I'm going to let you go, but hang on. I'll give you a cap from Straka.com. Is he still there, Dave?
He is indeed. We'll get his vitals.
All right, we'll take a break. It's 7:33 in Chicago. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show. 312-644-6767 if you've got something you want to get off your chest. We'll come back after this. You're listening to The Score, Sports Radio 670. This segment on the Chicagoland Golf Show is brought to you by the DQ Hot Dog of the Week. Win a Dairy Queen gift card. Log on to 670thescore.com for the DQ Hot Dog of the Week contest information. And it goes without saying, we thank you for listening today. Although we've still got another, 20 minutes. If you have something on your mind, want to make a comment, 312-644-6767. During the break, if you just joined us during the early part of the show, I brought up the fact that I taped the last couple hours of the Memorial last weekend, and I was watching the tape, and when J.B. Holmes walked off the 72nd hole, he had a red fanny because he had shot 77. He started the day, he was playing with Matt Kuchar. He started the day in the hunt. J.B. Holmes is a pretty good player. He's made almost $2 million already this year. We haven't even got to the U.S. Open. So he's had some good finishes, making a pretty good living out there, I would think. But the players had criticized the course setup at the Memorial all week. And Karen, I'm sorry, but the people that were doing most of the complaining were not the big names who have a little more credibility in that respect. It was the guys, the middle-of-the-road guys, the average guys, the marginal peripheral players, the ones that don't sell any tickets. Now, J.B. Holmes might be a fine golfer, and J.B. Holmes might have made a lot of money for himself already this year. But I'm sorry, but J.B. Holmes does not attract people to the TV broadcast, and J.B. Holmes does not sell tickets. Back in the old days, and it was always fun to analyze this stuff and kind of have access to the folks that ran the Western Open when we still had it here. And we were lucky because, as I was saying before, there is a certain amount of people that will watch golf on TV no matter what it is, whether it's good or bad. That's obvious from some of the ratings that they get on the Golf Channel. So you have a base of ticket buyers like, let's say, the Western Open here back years ago. And then you have people that buy tickets based on who's coming. Who's coming doesn't matter to the base, but it does matter to other people. So when you can announce that Tiger Woods has committed and he is going to be playing in your event, that really will sell a lot of tickets. At the Western Open, I would say that was probably good for 8,000 to 10,000 extra tickets per day. And then there were other names, like if Mickelson came out, that might be worth another 3,000 tickets a day. And these are all walk-ups. Years ago, the other name that sold tickets was Freddie Couples. And beyond those names, there weren't too many other people that you could add to a field that would automatically up your ticket sales. John Daly, I think, would be the other one that I can think of off the top of my head. And, of course, we can go back to the pre-Tiger years, and if Greg Norman came to play in Chicago, that was a big deal, and they sold a lot of tickets because a lot of people wanted to come out and watch Greg Norman swashbuckle his way around Cog Hill. Well, it's the same thing with TV. I mean, they're going to get a certain number, and this year they had a 1.8. They were down 31%. From last year's 2.6 at the Memorial. That's the final round on CBS Those are the ratings. And 2.6 is not exactly compelling when you think that the U.S. Open and some of the other major events will pull a 6 or even a 7. Last year, KJ Choi won, but Tiger Woods was playing. Well, this year the numbers were down. For these guys, the money is still up. But here's what happened. They had complained all week. There had been complaints all day. And usually the players have had class in the past. Of course, it's ridiculous to assume that all the players in the field like the golf course or like the course setup. The ones that always like the course setup are the ones that shoot 66 or 67. And I always thought for entertainment, they ought to bring in, instead of just bringing in all the guys with low numbers for us to interview in the media room, they ought to bring somebody in that shot 78 the first day, and let him have at it at the microphone. Tell us exactly what he thinks about the golf course and the way they set it up. So obviously you have a variety of opinions here as far as setups go. Well, in most cases, though, the players kept their mouth shut, and especially at something like the Memorial. That is the home tournament of Jack Nicklaus. Certainly one of the greatest players in the game. And without Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and the battles that they had over the years, and then they took the PGA Tour and television golf and the revenues to a certain point, and then Tiger Woods took over in 1996, 1997, and it went through the ceiling. And I'm going to tell you something. These guys have absolutely nothing to complain about. We had, 82 players last year win over $1 million on the PGA Tour, and these guys are complaining? We have an economy like we have right now where people are trying to hang on to their houses and everything, and these guys are making $1.9 million, J.B. Holmes, to play golf, and you're going to complain? So anyway, when Holmes finished up with his 77, apparently, of course, it wasn't him. It was all the fact that the golf course conditions weren't to his liking. As he walked off the green, and here's what always happens at the Memorial. Jack goes upstairs, visit with the TV talking heads, and then as the final groups come in, he stands at the exit where the players walk off the 18th green, walk up the little berm to go up to the scoring trailer. I've been there a few times. Every year, it's just about the same thing. That exit is only maybe 8 or 10 feet wide. Now, how can you walk up the hill and not see Jack Nicklaus standing in that exit? Well, that's what Tim Cronin said that Holmes claimed. He didn't see him, and he went back and shook hands later. I looked all over the Internet. Every golf source I could find, I could not find that reference anywhere. I'm not calling Tim a liar or anything, but I can't find it. And I saw that. I recorded that, and I still have it, and I watched it 6 or 7 times, and all I saw was a guy walk up the hill, avoiding looking at Jack. It was purposeful. And he looked to Jack was on his left. There were fans to the right in the gallery. This guy looked into the gallery to his right, tossed the ball to a kid, and walked right past Nicklaus, snubbing him. Now, what does that prove? Oh, boy, big shot. You walk past Jack Nicklaus. One of the things in golf, and it's part of the courtesy of the game, and that's why they call it a gentleman's game, is because after you play, you could be playing with the biggest jerk in the world, and after you play 18 holes with that person, it's tradition. You take off your hat, you extend your hand, after you finish play on the 18th hole, you shake their hand and say, "It was nice playing with you," or "I enjoyed it today." Even if you don't mean it, you still say that. And to walk past Jack Nicklaus and snub him, and some people, the jury's out with me, but some people that saw that same replay and mentioned it say that they saw the caddy Holmes' caddy had a smirk on his face. I can't judge that. It looks like that to me, too, but it could also be maybe just his look. But how you could snub Jack Nicklaus at his home, it was an invitational. Yes, they use the money list and other methods to choose the players for it, who to invite, but you don't have to be invited. And maybe next year, when they hand out invitations for the Memorial, if J.B. Holmes doesn't like playing the golf course or the way it's set up, of course all the players blame Jack and his influence, but it doesn't matter. If you don't like playing in it, maybe they ought to just take him out and next year not invite him. That would be interesting. All right, we'll come back for a final word after this. This is the Chicagoland Golf Show. I'm Phil Kosin. You're listening to CBS Radio in Chicago, The Score, Sports Radio 670.
White Sox baseball on The Score has a new sound.
The pitch to Paul. Swinging a long one left, down the line to the pole. If it's fair, it is. Sox win. A 2-run homer by Konerko here in the 15th, and they win 6-4.
Right here on the official radio home of the Chicago White Sox, 670 The Score.
I'm still getting emails from listeners and readers wanting to know the title of Frank Thomas's excellent book. If you remember, a few weeks ago we had Frank on the show, and I highly recommend his book. The name of it, if you're looking to give it as a Father's Day gift or buy one for yourself as a gift, is called Just Hit It. And it's at all bookstores in the Chicago area or online at Amazon. You can get a discount. Okay, well, enjoy Thursday and Friday TV watching. There'll be plenty. It'll be an orgy for the eyes watching the golf from Torrey Pines. Next Saturday, we've already got Sports Illustrated senior writer Gary Van Sickle lined up. We'll have more guests with our special U.S. Open edition of the Chicagoland Golf Show. If you need to get news between issues, if you're looking for some interesting reading online, surf over to ChicagolandGolf.com, our website. It also gives you a portal to our news hole where we put up-to-date and breaking news, mostly that's of interest to golfers in the Chicago area, both national and local. You also find my worm casting blog there, where I have some fun. But, you know, blog was made for me. I just enjoy doing that. Next Monday, start looking in golf courses Monday afternoon for our U.S. Open June issue of Chicagoland Golf. And, God, what a big week. This is one of the bigger weeks of the year, and I really love this. I love this week with the U.S. Open. I wish I was going, but we'll do the best we can from here. Tim Cronin to the Daily Southtown Star, thanks for joining us. Dave White, you did a great job of twirling knobs and coordinating back at the studio. Until next week, I'll say keep it in the short stuff, everyone. This has been take two. This has been a Pull My Finger production. So long, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Chicagoland Golf with Phil Kosin on every Saturday from 6 to 8 a.m. on WSCR 670, The Score.